Share via email. Report story. Nami opened the door to the kitchen. There weren't even 2 minutes since Sanji said he was done making lunch and the room was already in chaos. Luffy stealing food from the moment he took his seat. Usopp and Chopper were on alert, ready to stab Luffy's hands with their forks whenever the greedy captain would try and steal from them. Zoro and Sanji fighting over stupid things with Frankie watching them amused. Brook already asked Nami to show him her patience and, well, Robin was as quiet as usual, enjoying the lively atmosphere. She let a deep sigh out and took her seat between Robin and Luffy. Say, Nami, are you gonna eat that? I just made it in the kitchen, of course I'm gonna eat it, you idiot. She replied, hitting Luffy just for the fun of doing it, as his words didn't really piss her off. Geez, how can he act like nothing happened just a few minutes ago? It must be because, to him, it wasn't anything unusual. She was still trying to calm her racing heart and still couldn't believe his words affected her that much. Putting her thoughts aside, she started eating quietly. That hurts, Usopp. I told you I'd do it if you kept stealing my food, said the long-nosed man, looking Luffy dead in the eyes, prepared to protect his food at any hour of the day. I just can't believe him not saying a word after getting his bones crushed in a fight but complaining after getting his hand stabbed with a fork. Nami thought, keeping her eyes on her plate. Nami Tilda. Luffy cried while blowing air on his hurt finger as if it would help the pain go away. Do something. It hurts. What do you want me to do? Chopper is the doctor. And stop whining over stupid things. What's gotten into him all of a sudden? He never said anything when Usopp hurt him while protecting his food before, so why now? First, the scene from before and now this. The thought of Luffy actually having feelings for her made her heart skip a beat. She shook her head, making that thought go away. She was acting childish, like a little girl in love, and she couldn't stand that. Still, having his attention like this made her happy. She was desperately trying to hide her blush, thing that didn't go unnoticed by Robin. Never ever went past by that woman. She seemed to notice every little thing about her friends, thing that only came from her love and desire to protect those dear to her. Luckily for Nami, no one else seemed to notice her weird behavior, but she knew that there was no way Robin didn't see, so she was already preparing for the discussion that was sure to come. For the rest of the meal everyone was acting like they usually do. Nami would secretly watch Luffy trying to steal food while feeling her face heat up. But Sanji, Luffy cried with a hand placed on his growing stomach. I'm still hungry. How can you be hungry after you ate almost all of the food for today? Sanji yelled, locking the fridge to make sure Luffy wasn't going to steal anything. Do you want us to run out of food? It seemed like the 2 years have made Sanji forget that his captain had a bottomless pit as a stomach and that he wouldn't feel satisfied until his swallowed belly would take all the space in the room. No, but, here, Luffy, you can have what's left from me. I'm not hungry anymore. Everyone watched Nami as she stood up and, heading for her room. Promoted stories. You'll also like the last one, One Piece X Reader, 71.2K 2.8 note. Rewritten version of En Quad. She'll become the strongest En Quad, Exiomir D. YN, once a respected Marine, now infamous as the mastermind behind the judicial massacre. T. Why you don't remember me? En Quad. You looked up at him concerned, the weight of his words. C. Phoenix One Piece X Reader 56K 2.6K Reader. Is Fem spoilers early on recommended to know Law's backstory, Ace's backstory, and Germa 66 before reading your race, bird person similar to Fishman except WI. Sake in a bottle, One Piece X Badass Fem Re. 0.7.7K 380. You need a description. Then open the bottle already. Blank, blank, okay. I will give you a little bit of info tilde. Goman, Captain 51.7K 1.5K Book. 1. No regrets, right? It's been 2 years since the Battle of Marineford. 2 years since the Straw Hats were separated. After taking off from Amazon Lily with Law. My One Piece Book 1, 12K278 Monkey D. Luffy. A cheerful, carefree young man from East Blue wearing a straw hat set sail on a small boat carrying the biggest dream of finding the One Piece. He's our Masker Shadow, One Piece. Fanfic. OC3749, a girl who was born in the world and neglected by her family, and constant bad childhood experience and bullied led the girl into hatred of pirates, loathing them in Beck. Really, Nami, thanks. You're the best, Luffy said with a huge grin on his face, making her smile. Well then, I'll go and have some rest. It's still a long way to go to Fishman Island. Call me if something happens, Nami said, then left the kitchen. Soon after, everyone finished eating and started minding their business, so Robin thought that was her best chance to talk to Nami as Luffy was busy playing with Chopper and Usopp. Sanji was cleaning up after the meal, Brook went to sleep along with Zoro and Frankie was working on some new invention. Nami, I would like to talk to you about something. Robin entered the girl's room, but stopped talking when she saw Nami sleeping on the side of their bed. She smiled, wondering where she had spent her 2 years. She thought she had to ask her one day. Boy, did she miss her orange-haired friend. She quietly went out of the room, heading to the library, wanting to finish her book. Asterisk. She felt a light touch on her shoulder, then a soft voice calling her name. She slowly opened her eyes just to meet his. Without her noticing, a bright smile formed on her face at the sight of her captain. What is it, Luffy? She wanted to sound pissed off that he woke her up, but really, she was just happy that the first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was his sweet face and that adorable smile. I'm bored. Come play with me, please, the boy pleaded on his usual, childish voice. Can't you play with Chopper and Usopp? She asked, still tired after her nap. But Usopp went to help Frankie and Chopper said he had some of that stupid research to do, so I got bored, he complained, still hoping that Nami would accept and come play with him. Luffy, I would like to, but I'm so sleepy, she said while forcing her eyes to stay open. He pouted when hearing the unwanted answer, thing that made Nami smile even brighter. He's so cute, she thought to herself while trying hard to stay awake. Suddenly, his face brightened like he just came up with the best idea ever. Then, let me sleep with you, he said full of hope in his eyes. In that moment, Nami's heart skipped a beat and her face turned completely red. She was now completely awake. What is it? Are you sick? Luffy asked while placing a hand on the orange-haired forehead. You're burning hot. I should call Chopper. He then added while standing up. No, I'm fine, Nami quickly said, rolling on the other side so Luffy wouldn't realize how intimidated she felt. Quote. Could you please let me sleep? I'm really tired. Another moment with him in the same room and she would explode. Or so she felt like. But let me sleep with you, Luffy cried, hoping for a yes, this time. Don't you have your own bed? Yours looks much more comfortable. And when I usually go to sleep at night, the guys are with me now they're not. I don't like sleeping alone. He pouted. Ugh, fine. You can sleep here. Nami finally gave in, making her captain grin happily, as he laid on the other side of the bed. The orange-haired girl stood very close to the edge. She didn't want to be closer to him because she was afraid that her heart might explode. Even so, she soon felt an arm wrap around her waist and pulled her closer to the boy, now half asleep. Her head was now resting on his chest while his hands were tightly wrapped around her waist and back. It felt so good, being in his arms. It felt like there was an empty space that was now filled. She felt complete. Nami Tilda. That sleepy voice of him sent shivers down the orange-haired girl's spine. I love you. She woke up with a gasp. Looking around her room, she realized she was alone. There was no sweet childish raven-haired boy that was sleeping next to her, thing that made her feel empty. I love you. Those words wouldn't leave her mind. She couldn't believe she came to dream like this about Luffy. Sure, she would often dream about him while on Weatheria, but in none of those dreams had he ever confessed to her. Her heart was still racing and she couldn't move from that comfy spot in her bed for a long time. Finally, after a half of hour, she managed to get out of bed. She put a pair of jeans on, a shirt and a top, her winter coat and got out of her room. On the deck, under the tree, Luffy was sleeping with his hat covering his face and having both of his hands under his head. Nami couldn't help but notice that he only wore his usual outfit which, she was sure, wasn't enough to keep him warm so deep under the surface, so she went back in her room to take a thick pillow and cover her careless captain. Carrot carrot carrot. With his hat covering his face, Luffy looked like he was asleep, but really, he couldn't even close an eye as some thoughts were troubling him. Many times he held himself back from going into Nami's room and hugged her tight. He wanted to be close to her at any hour of the day and he would have a warm feeling every time he saw her or even thought about her. He did know he had that feeling often in the course of the 2 years, so it was something he was very familiar with, but since he finally saw her and hugged her after all that time, any feeling he had before would amplify. It was so weird and he couldn't understand what was going on, so he couldn't wait for the right moment to ask his nakama. He suddenly felt a warm material cover his body which made him realize just how cold it was. He removed his hat from his face and smiled bright at the sight of his beautiful navigator. Nami was surprised to see him awake. She didn't think she could handle a talk with him after her dream, so she stood up as fast as she could and tried to hide her blush. It was already pissing her off. This blushing thing, it just wouldn't stop. I thought you were sleeping and seeing how cold it is. Well, I didn't want you to catch a cold, she nervously spoke while stepping away as fast as she could. Shishishishi. Thanks, Nami. In the meantime, Robin was watching the whole scene full of interest from the crow's nest, smiling at the sight of her cold-hearted friend, finally blushing and catching feelings for someone. Well, since we're approaching Fishman Island, I should wait until we surface again to talk to her about this, the sly woman thought with a smirk on her face. Things are going to get interesting very soon. Sanji, give me food. She suddenly heard Luffy scream with his stomach growling. God damn it, Luffy. We didn't have time to buy a lot of food on Sabayati thanks to Koff, someone who had to get us into trouble again. Sanji yelled while coming out of the kitchen. And we don't know how much to Fishman Island, so we shouldn't finish our food supplies so fast, he then added, hoping that Luffy will understand. Ah, but Sanji Tilda, Luffy cried while holding his stomach. It's alright, Sanji-kun. We only have an hour till we reach Fishman Island, Nami said while coming out of her room, saving Luffy from 60 minutes of torture. What do I do with you and that stomach of yours? Sanji sighed while walking back into the kitchen. Come, I'll make you some steak. Meat, Luffy shouted while heading to the kitchen, making Nami giggle as she headed back to her room to finish organizing her maps. Asterisk. With his energy restored, Luffy came out of the kitchen and found the rest of the crew staring at the island that could already be seen. We're almost there. Shivering with excitement, the captain shouted with a huge grin on his face. All right, let's go to Fishman Island. So there you go. The third chapter. It's shorter than the first two, but school is starting tomorrow, so I wanted to post it today. Hope you like it. See ya next time. Where stories live. Discover now.